Hello everyone, welcome to the first film screening and discussion of inaugural online Dalit Film Festival Nottingham. I am Neeraj Bunkar, host of this festival. I am a third year PhD scholar at the School of Arts and Humanities, Nottingham Trent University. My research focuses on Dalit subjectivity and its representation in Rajasthan-based Hindi cinema. I am particularly interested in exploring caste dynamics, Dalit narratives, Rajasthani folklores, oral history, and cinema. Today we are screening The Discreet Charm of the Savarna. Is a 22-minute short film written and directed by Rajesh Rajamani. It offers a satirical take on the self-proclaimed liberalism of upper caste Indians, especially those who claim solidarity with the anti-caste movement and yet hesitate to confront their own caste privilege. The title cleverly references Louis Benuel's 1972 film The Discreet Charm of Bourgeois, which critiques bourgeois hypocrisy. Rajamani's film similarly uses humor to highlight the hypocrisy among upper caste Indians who present themselves as progressive allies. So now let's begin the screening of The Discreet Charm of the Savarnas. So I hope you will enjoy this film and feel free to share your thoughts or questions in the comment section. Enjoy. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the film. And so let me introduce you to our esteemed filmmaker, Rajesh Rajamani, along with our co-host, Dr. Alan Nizanji and Mrigakshi Das. Rajesh Rajamani is a filmmaker and film essayist. His writings offer a social commentary on mainstream Tamil cinema, and they have been published in The Wire, The News Minute, HuffPost India, First Post, and News Laundry. He won the Red Ink Award for the essay, The Dharavi Story in Tamil Cinema, How Kaala Inverts the Nayakan Gaze under the Lifestyle and Entertainment category 2018. His short films, The Discreet Charm of the Savarnas 2020, Haiku Love 2023, and Lovers in the Afternoon 2019 were presented by Ranjith's Neelam Productions, and they have been received critical accolades. He holds an engineering degree from Madras University and a postgraduate degree in management from IIM Indore. Prior to joining and pursuing this filmmaking, he worked in the retail department of a private bank in Mumbai, and now currently he is based in Chennai. And our co-host, Dr. Alan Nizanzi, is also a filmmaker, refugee, and activist, and currently a research assistant at the Nottingham Trent University. He serves as on the boards of the Nottingham Refugee Forum and Nottingham Arimathea Trust, supporting refugees in the East Midlands. And his practice-led PhD produced the documentary Voices, and the broadcast series Revealing the Untold, A Talking Point, both amplifying refugee voices. His thesis, Speaking Back to the Hostile Environment, explores refugee representation through documentary filmmaking. His films are used by charities for refugee integration and casework. And our second co-host, Mrigakshi Das, is from Odisha, India, and also a doctoral candidate at the School of Arts and Humanities in Nottingham Trent University, UK. She holds both a master's and bachelor degree in English from the University of Delhi, and her current research focuses on Adivasi literature, and her thesis titled Adivasi Literature and Cinema, Exploring Adivasi Adivasi authority and assertion. Her areas of interest include Dalit literature, Adivasi literature, and decolonial and post-colonial studies. So, all right, to start our discussion, I would like to ask Rajesh Rajamani a very basic question about the film, that what actually inspired you to create this film? What was the idea and thought process behind it? And additionally to it, I want to ask as well that what message did you hope to convey through this film?
Thanks, Neeraj. Thanks for the introduction and having me here. The inspiration to this film was like, this is around, I think I started working on the film in 2018. At that point, I decided to, make a jump from my banking career to filmmaking career. And I was looking for an idea to make a film, At that point of time, you looked at the Indian short film space. Everybody was making romantic films, everybody, is all about the coffee dates, the first coffee date. Either the film was about a first coffee date or about a breakup in a coffee shop. This was the theme that's overdone in the Indian short film space. So I thought I wanted to make something which is far away from romance, on these coffee dates. Then let's make something which is far away from these things. And it's around the same time there was actually a real there was a casting group, casting group for Bollywood in Facebook. There was a group, and somebody had actually put up, a call for a Dalit-like actor. They actually it was based on a real, poster. They put up a poster saying that we were looking for an actor who looks like a Dalit. And obviously, there is no specific way Dalits looks like. Everybody looks like, everything. There's no specific way any particular community can look. So there's a lot of discussion around it on Facebook, and it was called out, and there was a lot of criticism about such a poster. And then the poster was taken down. I just saw this and it was in my head. And suddenly I realized, why can't I, because I wanted to do something which is not done already, like in romance and relationship drama. So this seemed like a very interesting idea. So I thought, why not, weave a story around this particular poster? Like, what if there are three young filmmakers, they're running around the city of Bombay or running around any city to find an actor who looks like Dalit. So, through that journey, I could also make a commentary on, the liberal urban society. So I thought it's a good premise to make my commentary, and that's how the film came about.
Yeah, thank you. I would invite my co-hosts Alan and Migakshi if they have any question. Otherwise, I will continue this discussion. Yeah, Alan.
Yeah. Thanks, Niraj. Rajesh, thank you so much for the brilliant film. I really enjoyed it. As a filmmaker as well, from my background, I can understand the challenges that you went through. However, looking at this film, especially in its satirical form, there's one question that was posed in this film, and the question was, why would a Dalit be offended about playing a Dalit? And this resonated with the narratives on Black people and other marginalized communities, such as refugees find themselves in, being asked to represent themselves in the media, but essentially they are being asked to satisfy already established stereotypes. So my question to you is, isn't there a likelihood that you would end up stereotyping the upper caste as well? Once you're trying to do a play so that it shows what other people are focusing on the Dalit, but aren't you presenting a stereotype as the other people as well?
See, for a stereotype to happen, a stereotype cannot be created by a single voice or a single film, right? How does society create a stereotype? It's by a multi-pronged approach. You find that across culture, you find a stereotype repeated in books, in films, how we live every day. So stereotypes are created by everyday life, and they strengthen through cultural means. So my response to a stereotype, I don't think, I wouldn't really think of it as creating another stereotype. But what rather I did is, one thing that you find in in Indian films is that whenever people talk about caste, that caste is a hierarchical structure. Whenever people talk, and caste is something which affects everybody in the society. Everybody in the Indian society is linked to caste, whether you're upper or lower or you're the middle. You are, tied to caste. The caste is a baggage everybody carries. But what happens in Indian films or other cultural means, like say books, literature, and art, and music, everywhere, whenever anybody talks about caste, they often end up talking about Dalits, because the ones at the lower end of the structure, talking about caste and talking about Dalits seems to be equated as one. One of the things I, in fact, try to do is break that stereotype, and let's talk about upper caste. Let's talk about these upper caste, liberal, urban people, and see how they respond to an understanding of caste. So this was sort of a response to the existing stereotypes, and I don't think the movie is that powerful to create a new stereotype. I wish I was that powerful to do that, but unfortunately, I don't think any of us individual are that powerful to create new stereotypes, is what I think.
Over to you,
Hi, hi Rajesh. I think I'll shift the discussion a bit because my question is on the tone of the film. I think the film was very relatable and it showcased how caste operates in subtle ways in today's India. So I thought it was satiric, ironic, and I think humorous at the same time. So I would like you to comment on the tone of the film. That was it a conscious decision from your side to keep it light-hearted, because most caste-based films are serious in nature. So yeah.
That was a conscious choice, Say again, like how I earlier mentioned to Alan, when people talk about caste, they often talk about Dalits, as if they're the same, But caste is something that relates to everybody in the society, right? It's a social problem, not just a Dalit problem. So the similar way. So I thought how are, films on caste made in India, they're often very, very, violent related films. They're either about a honor killing, where a Dalit man falls in love with an upper caste woman, he's killed. So films about that, or films about manual scavengers who are dead, who die in the process, or on sexual violence on Dalit women, So whenever we look at anything to do with caste, it becomes only the problem of Dalits. And even within Dalits, it becomes a certain form of, physical violence, physical or sexual violence, So I thought the idea was to invert all these things, First, we'll make a film about, upper caste people. Another is whenever people talk about caste, they take the films to villages. It's almost as if only the rural villages are, it's where caste exists, but caste exists even in the most modern,
Yeah.
sophisticated, liberal urban places. So the idea was to shift the story to Bombay, and all films, take a very serious tone. I thought, okay, we're going to make the audience laugh. We'll take a lighter tone. And even in terms of colors, you look at it any regular film about, caste, you'll find very dark, very high contrast, very, very, very serious mood, very morose setting. We thought
Yeah.
we'll make it colorful. So we tried to sort of, just invert everything, every rule, in a caste related film and make it the reverse, and the idea was also, I don't think I was trying to make something, politically trying to reverse anything or not, but the very idea of reversing everything was a very fun activity, the whole engagement of making the film became very fun, and having that fun was important to me and the crew, more than, more than making that political point, So we were just, just by disturbing a certain status quo, we were, it was a fun process for us. So that sort of, those creative choices came from that need to have that fun by inverting everything. Yeah.
I've got another question. And this is something that actually came out when I was watching the film a bit earlier. Is on the juxtaposition of the love for American culture, American people, American things, as shown in the posters in that gentleman's room. And then even that guy, who was in the taxi, and you're saying, oh, do you know this person, and all American names? And as opposed to the hate that they seem to be inducing on the people whom they call the lower caste, the Dalit people. Was that a conscious decision that you took? And do you think that exists right now in reality, or you just wanted to highlight the differences?
No, that's see, all these, in fact, these characters, these perspectives were sort of drawn from very much from reality. Something you see in these very urban liberal spaces is that people like to talk about Afro-American literature, Afro-American films. They'll talk about Spike Lee, they'll talk about, the musicians, jazz music, and all. So everything, there's a certain romanticization of everything that's Afro-American, because talking about that, they think that they are sort of, by talking about, by talking about Afro-American culture, they think they're trying to prove their own liberal nature, their own, the modern culture. But when it comes to, when they go back home, they carry the notions of caste, So when they are entities of caste at home in their personal spaces, but in public spaces they have this phase where they talk about Afro-American culture, but they don't relate to something home. It's a very deliberate juxtaposition. Again, it was sort of satirical for us, so to bring it about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
like adding to this discussion, my question is to like how has the reception of the film been within the Dalit community and beyond as well? Like,
See, I think, I mean, see, to be honest, when we made the film, we like, because I mean, for any filmmaker, forget about the politics of the film. Once you make the film, you hate the film, because you find all faults with the film, you find all the problems. You realize your the performance is not good, the music is not good. Like you have problems with everything. So once we made the film, we thought, it's the first film that I made, and we found it quite, very simplistic in its technical, excellence and all that stuff. So I wasn't really expecting too much appreciation or praise. I thought, okay, let's just put it out. We have made something, and it was also during the pandemic, so nothing was happening. We weren't able to move on to the next project. So my idea was to actually move on to my next project and keep this for later. Because I was slightly embarrassed with the how technically good it was. I was slightly sort of felt embarrassed about it, that it wasn't good enough, is what I felt. But once we put it out, people were very, very appreciative, whether within the Dalit community or whether outside. I think people were quite appreciative that, because I think a film like this hasn't been exactly made with this politics and this kind of humor, hasn't been made in the Indian space, So I think all that we only realized after the appreciation came in, when people told us that they liked this, why they've not seen something like this earlier. So all that we ourselves discovered only through the positive response to the film.
yeah, yeah.
So there's this question that lingers in my mind. So I just want to know your point of view. So because you are a film critic and a filmmaker both at the same time, so why is there lesser representation in mainstream film industry? So there are no anti-caste films, so to say, in the mainstream film industry, for example, Bollywood. Like, I just want to know your point of view on that.
You want to know
Yeah.
I mean, you mean the kind of films or the kind of filmmakers? Like, because
Uh, Both. I think if you could highlight on both the things. Yeah.
see, one thing is that, filmmaking, it's a very expensive journey. I think it's a sort of a long and an expensive journey to make
Mm,
films. For example, even to make a film, like a short film, and to
mm,
realize whether you're good or bad, you need a
mm,
certain time and resources available. Like, because thankfully, I had already worked in a banking sector, so also my parents were, sort of affordable middle class family, so we were sort of they were able to support me in this journey. But what happens in most Dalits or most other Bahujans, when other backward castes or Adivasis also, is that I think there's not enough resources available to start off this career. If so because they're not resource rich, they're not able to make this choice, because it's a very unstable, it's a very risky career, in terms of,
mm,
you look at the Indian setup, people from marginalized communities prefer to take up a stable job as soon as possible. They don't want to risk a longer time, because they already come from very marginalized positions and they have a
mm,
lot of responsibilities to
mm,
take care of. They don't make risky choices. So filmmaking or writing is certainly a risky career choice in terms of financial stability wise. So that's one reason why you find, in general, Dalit or other, Bahujans also don't take up filmmaking as a career. And then a second thing, so far, I think, people thought caste is something Indians think it's not necessary to talk about it. That's not just in cinema. You look out anywhere, whenever people
mm,
talk about caste, they always lower their voice.
mm,
We'll talk about Amitabh Bachchan, we'll
mm.
talk about Shah Rukh Khan loudly,
Yeah.
we'll profess
Yeah.
loud. When we talk about caste, we talk about anything, we'll be like, we lower our voices, because we have this notion that caste is not something that we should talk about, almost as if we don't talk about it,
Mm,
we sort of believe that it will go away,
yeah.
like
Mm,
most middle class and urban setups, you feel that people think that, okay, we don't talk about caste, we are all casteless. So
mm,
so nobody makes it. But right now you see in Indian cinema, not just in Tamil
mm,
cinema, not just in
mm,
Southern cinema,
mm,
you have filmmakers, even in Hindi, like Neeraj Gaiwan, and
mm,
even non-Dalit filmmakers or non-Baujan filmmakers, even upper caste filmmakers now want to
mm,
talk about caste. There is a
mm,
new interest, but that's also, again, it's not a very political interest. I think they have realized that this is a new market. This is
Yeah.
an untapped new market where which we've not catered to yet. It's like, so they wanted to reach out to this new market and for purely commercial sense, But there's a very, I think even in Tamil cinema, among upper caste filmmakers also, there's a new interest to make films on caste because they find a new audience. They're able to draw a new market. So that's certainly increasingly happening today, is what I would say.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, to adding to this discussion as well, about the representation of the Dalits in the film industry as well, and how your film cleverly uses the satire to expose the realities within the film industry as well. As there is you see very often that how many film directors often that convenient excuse they use, that unavailability or the lack of suitable actors to avoid casting Dalit artists particularly. And also this mirrors a broader issue of Dalit underrepresentation in Indian cinema, your film as well. And similarly, your use of the Manu who fixes the character as a metaphor is a very powerful, the critique. And it exposes the hierarchical nature of Indian society, where birth dictates everything, like one's role and responsibility.
Right.
So the film's portrayal of Savarnas perspective on Ambedkarite celebration, as you also use Dr. Ambedkar's birth celebration in the film as well. And it is particularly very insightful, and it led bear the hypocrisy of performative allyship of the liberalism and the progressivism among the Savarnas. So my question would be how what were the biggest challenges you faced in integrating that Ambedkarite celebration and their symbolic meaning into the broader narrative of the film to highlight and to expose the dual nature of the upper caste people?
See, that wasn't particularly challenging, because like once when I was writing the story first, we thought, okay, this story is going to happen within a day. Within a day because they just have one day to find an alternative actor. They just have one day to find a Dalit looking actor in as per their terms. So then I thought, where should it happen? So it can happen in Chennai, it can happen in Bangalore, it can happen in any city. So the reason why we chose Bombay is because Bombay has, a very strong Ambedkarite culture. It's got this Ambedkarite celebrations, particularly, Ambedkar's birth and, the death anniversary are celebrated very fervently by Dalits there. And often, because I used to work in Bombay and I used to be in this banking space there, I always found people complaining about these celebrations and how they were, a traffic problem. They were creating traffic jam. So this very so these people, so the people celebrating the people celebrating Ambedkar Jayanti, for them it means something. It's a very what do you call it? It's a very spiritual day. For them it's a very spiritual celebration. But for the rest of the society, it's looked at as a traffic jam problem. So I found it very, because I lived in Bombay and I've often heard this, I thought it's something I have to incorporate it. So we deliberately went on Ambedkar Jayanti to shoot parts of, parts of the celebration and the traffic jam on that day to sort of then mix it with the rest of the film, which we shot later. Obviously it was not shot at the same time, so we shot much later. So we mix matched it, but that again came from people calling it a traffic problem every time, because, you look at it, Bombay, traffic jam in Bombay is not uncommon thing. It's a very common thing, It happens for Vinayaka Chaturthi celebrations. The routes are changed. Traffic jam is, you have to plan your travel during Vinayaka Chaturthi based on, how the celebrations, which roads are going to be blocked. Nobody calls it a traffic problem. So it's essentially the society's own bias and beliefs which determine what is the celebration and what is the traffic problem. So that sort of added another layer, to the film's narration. So we sort of, it was easy to incorporate it because that was something that's already happening in society. We just had to pick and fit it into the narrative, and I'm glad it fit sort of well into the narrative.
Yeah, indeed, it did fit well, and I think if we'll move to the audience question, and we got few questions from the audience as well. So first question would be like, thank you for the film, Rajesh, and reversing the gaze baked onto the cast bodies. I saw this film when it first came out. It made me stop and look back. It convenient to externalize the cast, but as you see, we do live up to what you saw. Thank you for holding the mirror back onto the wounded UC body. So I think it's not sort of a question, but it's a more of
Yeah,
a observation.
yeah. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah.
Then the next question is like, the play between male gaze and caste gaze is very interesting layers. And the layers of social inequalities beautifully portrayed. Would love to hear more on a woman's place and everyday struggle in a casteist society.
See, in terms of women's place in our society, certainly, women do handle, women have to, women, whether upper caste women or lower caste women, they all have to, work with, they have to work around patriarchal, norms and roots and all that. But certainly that. But one of the things that I actually try to bring here is also in this film is also about how those three individuals, right? There are two of them men and one of them is a woman. When even though there is a certain dynamic difference between them, there's a slight, because she's a woman, she's treated a certain different way by the male, film crew members, and she also responds in a certain way. But when it comes to the point of caste, they all become one unit. Once the caste question comes, there's not any more difference between them. Which is how caste works. I also think, when people are at home, when people are within themselves, you find there is a male female difference. There is a drastic difference between the role that a man plays and a woman plays within the home, within the household. But once people go out in public spaces, it's almost, it almost becomes, the caste becomes the most powerful entity. So gender becomes gender, which is a lot of gender, which is more pronounced at home, becomes sort of very smaller an entity in public, in public spaces, and then caste becomes the most determining identity. It's a sort of reflection on that is what we tried with those characters as well.
Yeah. We have one more question from Judith. The film was very efficient in showing the many subterranean but jarring discrepancies between what is promoted on the surface, as has been pointed out, and what is actually practiced in real life. Did you go right away to comedy and satire for this film, or had you explored other possible routes?
No, satire was something, that was my default. No, because I think even earlier, even before I made this film, I used to write a comic series called Inedible India. Inedible India was, we used, mythological paintings of Ravi Verma and tried to make those characters, I tried to make those characters talk about politics in a satirical way. It's not a conscious choice. I think I often, I think it's my comfort zone, I would say. I find it easier to use satire to make my point a lot more powerful. It's what I say. I think more than, I think when you say seriously, people often think that, saying something seriously is how a point can land powerfully. But I think sometimes when you're too serious, I think it gets lost on people. But satire has this ability to reach a lot more people, and it's a much powerful tool. But again, when I use this, it's not like I'm consciously saying, okay, how will I do this? Will I be serious or will I be satirical? On it's probably it's an extension of my own personality. I think it's not like a very conscious choice, but it's how I, even if I had to write the same thing in a Facebook post, I would write it with a certain a mocking sort of way. So I think it's sort of stems from my personality and not very conscious a choice.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Rajesh, because like I said, from my filming background as well, what I think is, if I want to drive an important point of view, it's difficult for it to be accepted, by the audience if it's serious. I have to find a way to soften them, first of all, to make them laugh. And sometimes the way that I've taken is, sometimes it's not even worth having human characters in a film. So many filmmakers will end up having animations, but it's still driving a message, you know. And so the question that I would say that I would like to pose to you is, do you think that very serious, big issues need to be carried by the vessel of satire, or or is it just your preference to create comedy whereby you can deliver any message? Because in my case, if it's something very serious and something very serious that I'm saying to the people up above, they won't have time for me if I'm presenting it in a serious way. It has to be in a satirical manner.
Right. See, for me again, like I mentioned, I was when I'm writing a comic series, when I made those Inedible India comic series, or when I made this film, it's again not a very consciously choice. It's a natural response. It's a natural response to a political situation, and I choose satire. But when I go back and look at how other writers are doing, look at traditionally, look at what Shakespeare had done. Shakespeare has comedy and tragedy, and nothing in between. Either it's comedy or it's tragedy. I think both, comedy and extreme tragedy, very extreme tragedy, they have this, they're very powerful in connecting people, and also I think they stand the test of time. They last for much longer. Look at all our stories around, all around the world. The classic comedy stories, the classic comical ones, or or the most tragic ones. These are the ones which cross geographies, and this also it also exists across time. They're able to stand. They're able to move across time and land. So I think it's that's not why I did this. I mean, I did what naturally came to me, and then when I looked around, how filmmakers, storytellers tell their stories, then I realized, okay, like comedy and tragedy are it's a very, they are powerful forms of telling stories. So I think tragedy, I don't know how good I'll be at, but comedy, I think I'm sort of convenient, comfortable with. So that's something I'm choosing as of now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, like, moving on to this discussion, I would add to this discussion further that do you think, Rajesh, that it is also, that a privilege of telling a serious concern, like the story of a serious concern, let's say about the caste, about the Dalit subjectivity, which is more of a, that depend on the positionality of a filmmaker. Let's say if a filmmaker belong to Dalit community and he or she wants to tell a story about Dalit community in a very satirical manner, people may not have any objection or many, that opposition about why you presented this story in a very satirical way. But if a person belongs to upper caste community and he or she wants to present a story, the same story in a satirical way, will the people will accept it? So do you think the positionality?
I get your question. I get you. That's a very valid concern, I think. But I think, forget about the comical ones. Let's even look at the serious ones. Even the serious films on caste that upper caste filmmakers are doing, they're not getting it right. So even when they're making serious films, they are struggling to get some of the perspectives right. See, because we had a film like Article 15. We had several other films. And they've all been heavily critiqued by people. They've been heavily critiqued by critics as well as the audience, because there is an inability to fully understand caste as a social a social problem. So I think, forget about even going comedy wise, even in a serious even to make a serious film, I think upper caste filmmakers are struggling, and I don't think that's to do with identity. I think that's to do with your understanding. Identity doesn't matter as long as your understanding is complete and it's accurate. I think you can tell it in any way. I don't think the identity should really matter. But I think we look at. But though I understand, but I'm sure I understand where your question is coming from. But I'm sure even if there's a Savarna film, because you look at some of these, even Bunal. I don't think Bunal was necessarily a working class man. Bunal made a film which sort of makes fun of the ruling class in Spain, right? So I don't think he was a a working class man, but because there is truth in his film, it naturally resonates. So I don't think we really need to worry about the identity. It's the understanding and the truth in your perspective that matters, I would say.
Yeah, indeed, it's very. Yeah, Alan and Mrigakshi, if you have any question, you can go further. Otherwise,
Yeah, I just have one question. Have you had any responses, from audience members who are from the upper caste who have watched this film? And what was that response, if you have?
No, I think mostly I had very positive response, from upper caste audience, from people who were upper caste, the upper caste audience mostly said nice things about the film. But I think also I found one thing, interesting is that I think they were also too scared to critique the film because they
Yeah.
thought if I say something bad about this film, will I become a casteist? Will it somehow will it somehow reflect on my poor understanding of caste, or will it reflect my bias? So they thought it's a very safe thing to praise the film. So I mean, like some of them might have really liked the film, and some of them, but I think I found that people were playing it safe. They I think particularly very privileged people, they were finding it safe to praise the film because they don't want to uh, they weren't sure if it'll expose their bias or not. So that's something I sort of understood. But like when you asked, mostly people say positive things, but why and where it came from, I'm not sure about it.
Mrigakshi, do you have any question?
I think you mentioned that you are working on another film. So if
Yeah.
you could elaborate on what is it about and if it is uh, an anti-caste film.
No, well, I don't know if it's a political film at this point of time. See, I'm still working on it. It's in the early stages of the writing process. But I'm trying to use humor in that too, because I even between, before writing this particular script that I'm writing now, I did write a few, romantic ones. I mean, unlike earlier, I'm okay with romance stories now, so I looked at as, a few romantic ideas and all that. I did work on those ideas as well. But then I think humor still seemed to be a slight, uh, it gives a slight edge to my script, it makes it stand out from other writers. So I'm trying to,
Yeah.
sort of use humor to make a certain commentary. But I think it's too early to tell anything more on the script. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we got a question from Nicole. And thank you very much, Rajesh. I really enjoy watching this film. Would you like to tell us a bit about your current project? This is potentially very close to what has been asked. I think, yeah, you have answered already.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if you can answer about like what was the the experience like collaborating with Ranjith's Neelam production, which is known for this anti-caste productions and so many films that really resonate with the society and also questions the caste society as well. So
Right.
how was your experience?
So initially for this film, what happened is when we started the film, I started this as my own, my own production, like I started this on my own. But once we sort of were towards the end of the film, we finished shooting the film. We were in the post-production, but just the music was pending, just the music was pending. It's only at that point of time I got to know, like personally got to know Paranjit's Neelam, and I shared the film with him. He liked the film very much. He liked the film, and he said that the film makes a very, it uses humor to make a very important political point. And then he wanted to present it. In fact, I didn't even ask him. I just showed it to him as just a networking effort. He suggested that he could present it under Neelam's banner, which certainly gives us more attention. I mean, like that's a. I mean, I didn't even ask for it. He was very generous to put his name and help the film get more attention than it otherwise could have. So he came forward to help us with that.
Yeah, right. Like we have a question from Meena.
Yeah.
Given the self-reflexivity of the subject of the film, please tell us how you chose to cast the actors who played UC characters. What were the consideration that mattered to you?
See, to be honest, actually, the actors we eventually see when we started making the film, I really wanted actors who, who come from South Bombay. People who look like they come from South Bombay. South Bombay is one of those, very elite space in Bombay, and because people talk English, people wear a certain kind of clothes, and they speak a certain kind of, English language too, so the kind of people, the kind of language that's spoken in South Bombay, you will not find in other parts of Bombay, like Borivali or Malad. You will not find that kind of conversation happening. So I wanted my actors to sort of represent South Bombay, but when when I started making the film, I couldn't really get exactly the same kind of actors. I couldn't, because when I was in my banking career, I myself lived in South Bombay and I've seen people there, but unfortunately we couldn't get people who were willing to act, people who had some acting skills, and people who also sort of represented South Bombay. I couldn't get all of that very accurately. So then I think we started, looking for actors who can be as close as possible to represent these upper caste, not just necessarily upper caste, but sort of a very elite space, an elite South Bombay kind of space. We tried our best. Again, to be honest, when I look at the film, I'm not very happy in even in how we captured the language or their clothes and all. But again, there was a compromise. Once you start making the film, you work with what you have. So it was sort of it was a compromise that we took in certain departments with casting, performance, and the language they speak to.
I'm just checking if we have more questions from the audience. I don't think we have more questions. So like Alan and Mrigaksi, if you don't have any question, then we can just maybe close the discussion here. So yeah. So thank you, Rajesh and Alan and Mrigaksi, for such an insightful discussion. We have covered a lot of ground today, and I would also like to thank Bonington Gallery, NTU, and other partners who have helped in organizing this event. And I would also like to thank our audience for their engaging questions and for joining us today. And I would request everybody to don't forget to check out our website and the rest of the films which are lined up for the festival, and visit our website for more details on upcoming screenings and events. So see you on next Thursday for the next screening and discussion. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Neeraj. Thanks again for having me here. Thanks, Mrigaksi and Alan, and thanks, Bonington Gallery. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.